Hello, and thank you for joining me on another episode of the Tech Exec podcast, where we triple your impact per engineer. As always, I'm your host, Aviv Ben-Yosef, advisor and consultant to the best tech executives in the world, and today we're going to be covering moving past delivery. If you're on my newsletter, you should have received my latest article, which was about assessing an R&D team, R&D organization, and knowing whether you're doing well or not. Now, it is basically a guide that has a bunch of metrics and sort of heuristics that I use with my clients in order to try and pinpoint their strengths, their weaknesses, opportunities. But I decided for a few podcast episodes to focus on an aspect out of each of those a bit more in length because I think there's value in that. And I'll let you know right now that if you want to get all of those metrics, there's a link in the show notes and you can get a downloadable PDF with a bunch of those so you can start thinking about how you want to measure organization and try and assess where you're at. Now, the first group of metrics that I discuss is called delivery. But I want to talk in this episode about how we only measure delivery to a point where we see we're doing good enough and want to move past it. So, delivery, of course, is about getting things done. No one cares how nice your code is, how happy your engineers are, whether you're on budget or not. All of that does not matter one bit if the team is not delivering consistently. If management, leadership cannot rely on your organization to do what you say you'll do on time, no one cares about anything else. You are there because the business requires the code in order to get some business output, business impact out of it. We need those features because we need to sell those contracts. We need those features because we have to make that process faster. Whatever that is, that's what we care. No one wants to print out your amazing code and put it on walls, right? The board does not give a damn about that. What we care about is the delivery in order as a means to an end to get to the business result. Therefore, your organization should not be obsessed with delivery as its only yardstick for success. And exactly this is something I describe in the article. We only look at delivery as the basic fundamental part of our work before we start aiming higher. Therefore, you have to nail the basics. So let me ask you, if you want to move past delivery, if you want to make space for yourself, for your managers to start thinking about higher altitude impact, which we'll cover in the next episodes, you have to get these basics done. So, for example, do you have reliable quality? I see so many teams as they have passed a certain threshold of growth just have their quality take a nosedive because all of a sudden we don't really have a lot of people who understand the entire system. We don't have people who really understand the consequences of touching different parts of the code. And we have a very bad culture when it comes to ownership. And when this happens, you don't have good accountability. People don't care about quality, especially if you have QA engineers. You tend to blame them or expect them to find everything. And things start going downhill really fast. You have to nail down quality. And if you have quality issues, for example, if you noticed that recently the average outages per feature deployment is increasing, you have to nip it in the bud. You have to ensure that no one feels like they are entitled to just pushing things to production, marking their tickets as done, and expecting the fallout to be something that someone else handles, or that it is okay because they got to mark the sprint as done, even though they had a bunch of bugs that had to be treated in the next sprint. If you have such aftermath after every sprint, you are misaligned when it comes to what genuinely matters, and you have to stop it. Next, there are a bunch of metrics that are talked about and used all over the place. You've heard the Accelerate metrics, DORA, cycle time. These have value. I work with companies that measure this, and I believe it can really help you to pinpoint whether your team is suffering from a degradation in quality of service. For example, things start to get slower, or there's a certain team that starts to suffer for some reason. However, this should not be the end-all be-all. You just need to get a sense of whether things are on track or not, whether things are getting worse or better, and that's it. You don't have to measure this strictly, look at it every single week, in my opinion, you want to get to a situation where your quality is solid, where your sprint doneness is good. Sprint doneness, for example, is in general, how many of the things you committed to are done. It shouldn't be 20-30%. It should be more like 80-90%. And not because you buffered everything, but because people are getting things done. And if you don't have the sprint doneness reliability, no one can start planning the release schedule, the roadmap for the product, because, deadlines mean nothing in your company. Deadlines have to have a meaning in order for us to get past simple delivery. If you do not want to be a feature factory, if you do not want to be treated as a bunch of highly paid code monkeys, you have to move past rote delivery. If you do not want to be replaced by ChatGPT in 6 months, your team better get its act together. So I really hope that delivery is something that you can now assess yourselves on and see we're doing okay. And if you're not doing okay, pinpoint. What are you going to be focusing on in this quarter? We're just starting Q2 in 2023 as I'm recording this. What will you be focusing on? Will you be focusing on your quality? Will you be focusing on your sprint doneness? On how much non-feature work, which is how some people refer to tech debt, are you doing? Find those things that matter the most, get them to a sensible level, and move past delivery. Start thinking about what really matters, because, hey, everyone who's not doing that right now are getting their teams laid off, they're getting budget cuts, and I don't think you want to be on that team, do you? So get your act together. If you need any help, my email is in the show notes. Reach out to me. Let's chat. And if you want to get the rest of the metrics before the next episodes of this series, you can check out the link in the show notes as well. That's it for this week. Thank you for joining me. If you haven't yet, do subscribe to my newsletter. It's the best newsletter online for tech executives. If you don't believe me, give me a try. And if you don't like it, I'll give you your money back. And lastly, do join the Leading Edge Club. It's a closed global community for executives in tech. We just got past 100 people worldwide. If you want to get there, there's a link in the show notes to apply. See you there. Thank you. Talk soon.